we don't need confirmation this is the case. Provisional death count, this is from StatsCan, because I want to segue this into the next story, which was an unfortunate tragic death, but not what some people initially thought. Not that it makes it any better, because it doesn't. It might actually make it worse. Provisional data shows an estimated 47,227 excess deaths in Canada from the end of March 20 to the beginning of June 22. 7.4. You know what we care about, StatsCan. We don't want to cover the entire pandemic. 7.4% more deaths than expected without the pandemic. During this period, at least 38,000 deaths were directly attributed to COVID-19. That's a curious statement right there, because we had some doctors out of Canada saying that we had not been distinguishing between hospitalized with COVID versus hospitalized from COVID. So I don't know how they can make that statement. After peaking in January 2022, excess mortality declines in Canada. After the emergence of the Omicron as the principal variant, it's an interesting, this is what we call persuasion. May not be related to the excess deaths whatsoever, but let's preface this statement with it so that you're persuaded to think that it was related. After the emergence of Omicron as the principal variant of COVID-19, Omicron being the less lethal variant of COVID. So after the less lethal variant, excess mortality peaked in January 2022 with 21.6% more deaths than were expected in that month. Wow. It's amazing, by the way, how you could change the entire framing of that persuasion. After the emergence of the less lethal Omicron as the principal variant, excess mortality peaked at 21 points. How about if you say, roughly a year into the rollout of the jibby jab, excess mortality peaked at 21.6%. How about you persuade it that way? This was the highest rate of excess mortality in Canada since the start of the pandemic. Oh, that's odd. After all of the vulnerable, the weak, have already succumbed to the early, more lethal variants of the virus, the less lethal variant, a year later, 2 years later, 21.6% more deaths than expected. Then it declines. Don't worry, it declines. Now, again, typically the things decline after the most vulnerable die off. Things decline because the most vulnerable are already dead. Same thing with the initial spike in COVID deaths. This decline in excess mortality coincided with a similar decline in deaths attributed directly to COVID-19. Accordingly, the provisional data, on average, 477 weekly deaths were directly attributed to COVID-19 from the beginning of January to March. That number dropped to 187 deaths per week from the beginning. Are they going to mention vaccines at any point in here? I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to that later. What I wanted to show you is another just a terrible story of an individual, 35 years old, sudden death. Now, it's not the sudden death you're thinking about, or at least not that we know of, but let me pull up a tweet from Patty Hajdu. I do not like Patty Hajdu. I do not. Patty Hajdu, MP Deputy, Thunder Bay, yada, yada, Minister of Indigenous Services and Fed North. Okay. Member of Justin Trudeau's government. Let's go to the beginning one here. An individual named Adam Exton was a longtime Liberal Party organizer and served with me and other ministers of health as Director of Parliamentary Affairs. My heart is with his family and friends right now, missing him so profoundly. A man named Adam Exton died at 35 years old. Now, died suddenly, it said, when, there's no cause of death in the obituary. Let's see if I can get this up for everybody to see here. Doesn't specify cause of death in the obituary. It's with great sadness that the family of Adam Bexton announced his passing on December 9th at the age of 35. As a young person, Adam became actively involved in politics and had a passion for public service and volunteering in the community. And then it says, in memory of Adam, donations can be made to the CMHA, which stands for the Canadian Mental Health Association, an organization that was very important to him. So they're clearly suggesting something here, that it might have been suicide. And Patty Hajdu herself, me see if I can get back. Despite the ways Adam contributed, he struggled too, like many others may be right now. The pandemic was traumatizing for so many. I might correct you there, Patty. Not the pandemic, but the government response was traumatizing for so many because it was outright abuse for so many. Not abuse for you liberal politicians and others who were vacationing in the Bahamas while they were locking us down for Christmas. Not for the politicians who were gallivanting around attending protests while we were being locked in our houses for 5.5 months during winter under curfew. No, it was traumatizing for many, not for you. So many things need to change so that people who are living with poor mental health or problematic substance use can get effective care. I genuinely hope that Patty Hajdu is not, if she doesn't know that Adam took his own life, I genuinely hope that this is not a diversion. It doesn't look like it is. I genuinely hope that if she knows that Adam, his seeming taking of his own life had nothing to do with substance abuse, I hope she's not suggesting that it is. And if it were the case, I hope she's not disclosing something that she has no business disclosing. Something about this reeks of wrongness. But the ultimate underlying wrongness of this, the pandemic was traumatizing for so many. So many things need to change so that people who are living with poor mental health or problematic substance use can get effective care. Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is coming from the same government that wants to offer medical assistance in dying to people with mental health issues. Just let that sick piece of irony sink in. Many things have to change so that people who are living with poor mental health or substance abuse can get effective care. Yeah, maybe like not locking them down and locking them out of their AA meetings, their NA meetings, their substance abuse meetings. Maybe not isolating people in 1.5 apartments. Maybe not traumatizing people with incessant day in and day out fear porn, that if they see their mommy and their daddy, they might kill them. That if they cross paths with a vector of a filthy child on the street, they have to hold their breath. Maybe not locking people down, shutting them down, isolating them from friends and family during the holidays. So many things happen. You know what has to change? The government, so that this never happens again, Patty. Sorry. So I had put out one response, which was, is this... Patty Hajdu is suggesting that this was not a jibby jab related, maybe not directly, maybe this was not a died suddenly type thing, but someone took his own life as a result of what she recognizes being government measures in response to the pandemic. I don't know why she thinks that is somehow makes the government any less culpable for the death of Adam than she thinks. Does she think that makes the government less culpable or more culpable? But I just say, because the first tweet was unclear what she was getting at. If young people are increasingly taking their own lives, as I believe they are, despite what the CBC was reporting, many people thought suicides would go up during the pandemic. Turns out they went down. The suicides went down, but somehow distress calls to suicide hotlines went up 200%. It's crazy how that happens. It's almost like it doesn't make sense. FYI, Patty Hajdu, if young people are increasingly taking their own lives as a result of the inhumane social, financial, and spiritual abuse imposed on them by your government, that is as much blood on your hands as it is a premature sudden death from the jab.